Shifra and Puah, Yocheved and Miriam, they were the midwives, and they defied the order of Paro not to kill the male children. And the Torah tells us why did they do that? Because Vatiren Hamiyaldos says Elokim, because they Yiru Shamayim, they feared Hashem, and therefore I pointed out, therefore it says Vayomer Paro. It doesn't say they spoke to Melech Mitzrayim, they weren't intimidated whatsoever. And because of this, the Torah tells us, Vayetev Elokim Hamiyaldos v'yivrev ha'om v'yatzmod, Pasuk Chof. Therefore Hashem did good with the Mialdos, and the people increased in number, v'yatzmot, and became very powerful. And then the Torah tells us, and because they had this Yiru Shamayim, Hashem made houses for them. Rashi says, what's botim? Boti kuna, boti levia. Families of Kuna and Levi came from Yocheved, and Malchus, which came from Miriam. So the obvious question, so Rashi explains, what was the Tova? So Rashi says, the Tova, the good that he did, the reward he gave them was that they merited to have these special families. However, if that is the case, it should have said, that's what it should have said, but it interrupts it. Hashem did good for the Aldos. Seems to me that's a little bit of a digression. It's not related to what was the Yitav Aldos. Rashi learns is going straight. Aldos, what is that? Hashem made Batim. They merited special families. However, the Torah interjects in between that, right before it says that, what is that all about? Seems to be it's unrelated. Vayitiv lemialdos. In a minute. Meir Shapiro, Zech Tzaddik Livrocha, is the one who introduced the Daf Yomi in the 30s at the Marienbad. There was a Agudas Yisrael convention gathering. All the Gedolei Yisrael came to Marienbad. It was in Austria, and he presented this concept that all Jews, wherever they are in the world, every day they should learn a Daf Gemara. 2 sides of a page every day, and it was instituted, and it took on, and till today, Daf Yomi is attributed to Meir Shapiro, who was known as the Lubliner Rav, the Reshiva of Chachmei Lublin. This concept was introduced before Meir Shapiro, but it didn't take on. It's the same idea. The other person introduced it a number of years earlier, did not take on. Meir Shapiro introduces it. They embrace it, it takes it on. Until today, the thousands and thousands of Jews who studied Daf Yomi, and multiple times Shas was completed, is his merit, because he introduced this concept. Why did Meir Shapiro merit to do this? And the first person that they both made the same suggestion. And it was a similar setting. The answer is because Meir Shapiro had a schus. And the schus was that what he suggested was effective, and as a result of that, he merits all the learning that takes place. The other person, he didn't merit it, but it was the same idea. So one person, they both make the same suggestion. One succeeds, one does not succeed. Why? Because one has a schus, the other one doesn't have the schus, that he should succeed. What happens if they would have saved the children and the Jews wouldn't have increased the number? These mega numbers. If that's the case, the result of their action doesn't have that special value. It has value, but not that kind of value. But the Torah says he did good for the Mialdos, that they should be the ultimate beneficiaries. Why? Why did they merit special families? You know why? Because their action brought about Klal Yisrael at these mega numbers. If it would have been lesser numbers, maybe they wouldn't have married special families. Because the result of their sacrifice didn't bring about the same result. But because their sacrifice brought about this result, therefore they merited. Therefore they merited to have these special families. That's the way I understand it. I think that's the way, I haven't seen it now, but I think that's the way the Or HaChaim HaKodesh explains the Pasuk. Vayete vayirev. Tzorchel das maya tova. What is the atova? He says, "Ulai shu arosha b'somuch vayaslim batim." Rashi. He says maybe what's stated slightly a little bit later, he made for them families. V'kosher. So Orachaim's question, Orachaim Kodesh, what I just asked. If that's the case, the Vayitev is the families. Why does it interrupt with Vayiravom Vayatzmu? The people increase the number. Venira Shemorainu Hakosuf Dover Shebemtzu Rov B'nei Yisrael. It's giving us the why did they increase the number? The Mfisha Masha Kodmu them Shoy Masapkus Mayim Mubazosel is there. Because they provided, not only did they not kill them, they provided the sustenance. Therefore, he gave them Rav Tov, he gave them, like we said, mega numbers. And because as a result of what they did, there were mega numbers, he gave them the opportunity to be able to. The only reason Hashem gave them the opportunity that you should be able to bring about, to sustain mega numbers. Oh, dear most Kibros Hashem Yerosim Elkim, he's been Liyodam Asos Mitzvahs like Kates Labras Choram. This is what I said. Because he saw the degree that they had Yerushalayim, he gave them an opportunity that the mitzvah is unlimited. Hear this? The schar that they should have a greater schus. So as a result of every one of the children were born, how many children did they not kill? If they were, let's say, they saved 1,000 children killed. But here, if you have millions of children being born, how many children did they not kill? Millions. As a result of that, the schus is greater. And because the schus is greater, therefore, they merited to have these special families. Where do you find this concept? We have this concept, the Chofetz Chaim says, we find that Avram Avinu hosted the Malachim, the angels. And the Gemara tells us, the Medrash tells us, that for every aspect of that Hachnosis Orchim, it had an eternal impact on Klal Yisrael, every detail, every nuance of the Hachnosis Orchim. He said, rest under my tree, we married Dani Yaakov. Echo pas lechem, he offered the bread, we married the mon. Yukach no mayim, we married Be'er Shel Miriam. So the Chofetz Chaim asks, Avram Avinu, how old is he now? He's 99 years old. He's been doing chesed his whole life. Why all of a sudden now does the Torah put the chesed under the microscope, that every nuance of the chesed we find is this phenomenal return? Why? That's a chofet. And Mashinasa the Atzmo, Nasel the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what he did himself, the Jews received directly. What he did through a shliach, we got through a shliach. That's where the water came through Moshe Rabbeinu. What about all the chesed until now? So Chofetz Chaim explains that who are these guests? These guests were Malachim. You couldn't have better guests than this. So what was the quality, the value of this Achnos Orchim? This was at the ultimate level. Why did he merit to have Malachim? He merited to have Malachim. This was the accumulation of all his schus of his whole life of chesed. Now you're getting the bonus. The bonus is now you have an opportunity to host Malachim. So therefore, the result of that is the Anei Yaakov, the Mon, and Be'er Shel Miriam. That's how the Chofetz Chaim explains it. It's a similar concept. Why did he merit this ultimate? Because of all the chesed until that point. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu increase the number? Because he wanted them to be beneficiaries of what? Of their action. And that's why, since they brought that about, therefore Yaslam Botim. Therefore Miriam merited Kuna, Malchus, and Yocheved merited Kuna and Leviah. Similar idea. It says that when he saw the Malachim, it was what? It was 3 days after the Milah. 3 days after the Milah, and Hashem had caused it to be the hottest day in the history of the world. Why? Because he wanted to give Avram Avinu a respite from the guests. So what happened? HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that he was mitztayer, that he was pained, that there were no guests coming. He couldn't do his hospitality. So normally the malach would have come as angels. But why did they come b'tzuras hanoshim? Why did they come in human form? So he should be able to what? To do achnosis orchim. I mean, the pain of not being able to do achnosis orchim wasn't providing the respite. So because he was pained that he couldn't do achnosis orchim, therefore they were sent in human form. So he should be able to provide the achnosis orchim, the hospitality. Let's say he wouldn't have been pained. First of all, we accept what was the pain? What was his pain that he couldn't do achnosis orchim? He was afraid that the food would get stale and the flour would get warmy. What was his pain? So we explained that Avram Avinu, that every person that came through his door came in as a pagan, left as a monotheist. So that means every person who did not come because of the heat, that means that person is remaining a pagan more longer, and therefore the Kiddush Hashem is being delayed. The Chil Hashem is being extended. Avram Avinu couldn't tolerate the Chil Hashem as a result that he couldn't host these people. Because every person he hosted, the end result was they became a maimin. They were maiminim. So that was the pain. So what precipitated that the Malachim came as human beings? The pain of Chil Hashem. So what was the fruits of that pain? They came as humans. But you know what the fruit of that was? Anei Akovod, Mon, and Bereshel Miriam. Because of that pain of Chil Hashem. You understand? But what was the pain? That pain was directly connected to Yerushalayim. Why are we pained? In many areas we should be pained, because we'd have that level of Yerushalayim, like Avram had, or Avos Hashem. Couldn't tolerate it. Chil Hashem. So if he wouldn't have that pain, they would have come as angels. He would have had nobody to host. It would have produced that level of fruit. But it did produce it because he was pained. So the more you sacrifice, the more you put on the line because of Yerushalayim, the end result is the return is a much greater return. His return was Anei Akavod, Mon, and Bereshel Miriam. Their return was Revir V'om, so they should be merit these special families, Kuna, Leviah, and Malchus. Vayelech ish mibeis Levi. A man went from the house of Levi, Vayikach es bas Levi. And he took as a wife the daughter of Levi. Who is this? Rashi. Vayikach es bas Levi. Poroshoy mimenav nigzer Paro. Initially, he divorced his wife. He separated from Yocheved because of the decree that all the male children should be killed. And he remarried her. This is what Jabe was referring to, the Gemara in Sota. He went because his daughter Miriam advised him. Your decree is even more severe than Paro's. In Paro Gozal HaZchorim, he decreed that the male should be killed. Your action prevents even the females from being born. And because of what she said to him, he remarried her. Literally, second marriage. Went through all the aspects of marriage a second time. And she regained her youth to be able to conceive Moshe Rabbeinu. She was 130 years old. Shenolda bevor when Levi came through the walls of Egypt, she was born then. So that's when the number 70 came about. She was the 70th. And we were in Egypt 210 years. And we left Egypt. Moshe was 80. So that means Moshe was 80 years before they left. And she was there when they came into Mitzrayim. So how old was she? She was 130 years old. And when she conceived and she was pregnant with Moshe Rabbeinu, she was 130 years old. The course of Bas Levi, she's Bas. What's Bas? Indicates she regained her youth to be able to conceive. So there's a question which is asked. Torah makes a whole issue. Sorry, Menu, Akora Hoisa. And she said she already was way past menopause. She aged. And then Hashem, when she was meant to conceive Yitzchok, she regained her youth. The Torah makes a whole issue of this. And yet Yocheved, who's older, there she was 89, and she gave birth at 90. Here she's pregnant at 130, and soon afterwards, within the year, she gave birth. Torah somehow sweeps this under the carpet. Why does the Torah make a big issue over here? Yocheved, she's Bas. She was an old woman. She became Bas Levi. Here, Rashi cites Chazal when Sorry Menu regained her youth and she conceived. It says that day there was tremendous joy in the world because when Hashem brought about the miracle with Sorry Menu, all the barren women in the world also conceived. When Hashem changed Teva, made that change in nature, brought about this supernatural act, it wasn't limited to Sorry Menu, it had an overflow effect. The overflow effect was many women who were not able to conceive conceived that day. So there was tremendous joy in the world. Okay? So a takeoff of that would be, that was the first time in the history of the world that a woman who was barren, this ever happened. But once that happens, when it happens a second time, once it's on record that this happens, and it doesn't say she was barren. Yocheved wasn't barren. She just was aged 130 years. She regained her youth. Sorry, Mena was a greater miracle because she was Akora. Because she was barren, that was a greater miracle. Therefore, when that Hashem made that change in nature, many other women were affected by that change. Here, it's not. She's not Akora. She's old woman. She was past menopause. As a result of that, regaining youth is not at that level of Sorry Menu. But once it's on record that this happens, that a person can regain his youth, it's no longer earth-shattering. That was the answer they said then, which I heard many, many years ago. That's why the Torah has to make an issue of Yocheved becoming a Bas. Although she was an old woman, she regained her youth to be able to conceive Moshe Rabbeinu. I mentioned the Shalom Kodesh, that he explains. There's a Maral. The Maral says we find that Avram himself, when he became Avraham was the equivalent of a new creation. He was ex nihilo. When he went from the transition of Avram to Avraham, he was a Bria Chadosha. Even though as a physical human being, he was the same human being, but in terms of his significance, of his level of representation, that representation did not precede that moment. He was a Bria Chadosha. He was a new creation. Because the Torah says, at the beginning of creation, it says, Bihi Boram. When he created them, so the Chazal tell us, Bihi Boram, Osius Avraham. When Hashem created them, if you rearrange the letters, it's Avram. So Avram is not a continuation of the previous existence. He's the beginning of a new existence. The whole concept that this neshama is going to become that mega soul at Sinai, that happened then. That was the ex nihilo of that moment. That's the Maral of Prague. So Avram was Tchilas Abriya. And why do you have to be Tchilas Abriya? Why didn't Avram father Yitzchok until he was circumcised and he had the name change? Because Avram had to be that spiritual, that new existence that never pre-existed him. As Avram, he was able to father Yitzchok. As Avram without the hay, which is the old Bria, that has no relevance. Yitzchok, Klaus has no relevance to the old Bria. The old Bria is tainted with the chet of Adam Risha. This is the beginning of a new Bria. And circumcision, as we spoke, is a tikkun, is actually a correction in the chet of Adam Risha. So that's Tchil Zabria. The Shalom Kodesh says, when we left Egypt, that was the Tchil Zabria. Why? We find that the month of Nisan is a month of Chesed. We have Kimcha Pischa. We go out and have ways to do Chesed exceptional. Why? Because when Hashem took us out of Egypt, We were holding Mem Teshari Tuma. We weren't worthy. He had to give us mitzvahs to be worthy to be redeemed. He gave us the mitzvah of Milah, the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. So the ultimate, Nisan was the ultimate chesed. When Hashem created the world, what precipitated? What brought that about? Olam chesed yiboneh. The creation of the world, the concept is chesed. So therefore, it's chesed since the beginning of a new bria. This is the formation of Klal Yisrael, leaving Egypt, that each day was one level of advancement till we reach the 49th level of Mem Teshari Taro, to be worthy at Sinai. Therefore, this was the Tchil Sabriya. This was the involvement of a new bria, of a new creation. That's the Shalom Kodesh. It's a new bria. When Yocheved conceived this Tchil Sabriya, Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama, the child she's going to have here, is Shokol Keneged Yisrael. His soul was the equivalent of all the souls combined of Klal Yisrael. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was. As we see in a moment, when he was born, it says the house was illuminated. The Shekhinah was there. That's why he was the Goel, because he was the only one who was qualified. When the Torah was given, Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one who was qualified to receive the Torah, because Torah had been given to Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was the equivalent of all Klal Yisrael, because his neshama was the equivalent of the neshama of all Klal Yisrael. This is Tchil Sabriya. Tchil Sabriya, she'd be 130 years old, doesn't make a difference. Because it's Tchil Sabriya, therefore, she's Bas Levi. This is the new beginning. Although physically she was an old lady, not to be able to conceive. But as Tchil Sabriya, we're starting all over again. We start all over again, she's Bas Levi. That's why she regained this youth, that she has the capacity to conceive. And who did she conceive? The one who actually addresses the objective of Bria, which is Kabbalah Satorah. That's what I was thinking. See Rashi. So who's the Bas Levi? The Bas Levi is what? Is Yocheved. And the Ish is what? Is Amram. Now the question is, why doesn't Torah identify who they are? It should say, Vayelech Amram, Beis Levi, Vayikach Yocheved, Bas Levi. Why did Torah somehow keep them anonymous here? The parents of Moshe Rabbeinu, which brought about this most special human being who was ever born to the face of the earth in terms of his value of dimension, is concealed. Why? That's the Maral's question. Maral Gvurus Hashem asked this question. Maral explains, as I said, very often when people have children, always the characteristics that the child possesses has relevance to the parents. Some of the characteristics, the father's characteristics, the mother's characteristics. Moshe Rabbeinu, he had to be born. There was that special neshama, which is the equivalent of all the neshamas of Klal, so he had to be born. The couple that was most worthy, that they should be the ones to bring him into existence, was Yocheved and Amram. But who Moshe Rabbeinu was is unrelated to Amram was who Yocheved was, in terms of the characteristics. His dimension of person has no relevance to what Amram was and what Yocheved were. So if the Torah would say the mother is this and the father is this person, then he say, yeah, we see somehow there's some relevance. Moshe Rabbeinu possesses something which has to do with Amram and Miriam. He has nothing to do with that. Other than being a Levi, from being that special tribe, his parents did not contribute anything to his spiritual DNA. Therefore, the Torah says, so who went? Ish mi Beis Levi took Bas Levi. That's all it is. They were Leviim. They merited, Shevet Levi merited to have this most special neshama come into existence, which would address the objective of creation, who happened to be Moshe Rabbeinu. But it's unrelated to Amram and Miriam in terms of, and the Yocheved were, in terms of what they contributed. They contributed nothing to him, other than being Levi, which is the most spiritual of the tribes. That's the Maral. I explained the other day which I didn't say, this piece that the Baal Turim says when he said, Hova nas nischakvel, let us be wise. And this was the beginning of the enslavement, the bondage. So the Baal Turim says, Hova is B'gematria Yud Beis, is 12. And he says, we got to cap it. We got to take control of the 12 tribes. What does that mean? What did Paro represent? He wanted to snuff out that the Koach HaRa, Paro represented the Koach HaRa, that he should dominate the Yud Beis. He didn't succeed. He only dominated 11, not 12. Because as I mentioned the other day, Amram being the Godla Ador, being the leading Torah sage of the world, he tried to discourage them from enlisting in this workforce. The only ones who listened were Shevet Levi. They did not allow themselves to be conscripted. They did not show their ability. As a result of that, they never became Ovdei Avodah Zorah. Levi was never tainted with Avodah Zorah. So because Paro was not able to dominate Yud Beis, that's why. So who is Moshe Rabbeinu born from? Which Shevet? Because that was only Shevet. That special soul could only go through Shevet Levi. Couldn't be born through any other tribe. Because every other tribe was tainted. They were tainted with Avodah Zorah. The only tribe that was purebreds at that special level was Shevet Levi. So therefore, it's Ishmi Beis Levi to Bas Levi. That was why Moshe Rabbeinu was born in this setting, not in any other setting. But do we attribute his specialness to his parents? The answer is no. That's the morale. Therefore, we keep it under wraps. Therefore, it's Ishmi Beis Levi, married Bas Levi. Akari Isha, Atelid Bey. The woman conceives, becomes pregnant, and she gives birth to a son. Doesn't say who she is. Vatera Osa Kitovu. And she saw that he was Tov. What if she saw he was Tov? What, he was healthy? He was beautiful. And she concealed him, hid him for 3 months. So Rashi says, which is Chazal, Kitovu. Kishenolad nismale habayis kula oro. When Moshe Rabbeinu was born, the whole house was illuminated with the Shechina. This child was born with the Shechina, there's no such thing. The only child that ever was born with the Shechina. That means from get-go, this was a neshama, this child. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when we speak later, who is Korno Ponov, that he radiated. When he came down, that's where it reached its full potential. At this point, even as a child, when he was born as an infant, he radiated. The Shechina was associated with it. The whole concept of Hein Merkava, the Avos HaKadoshim, because what they achieved within themselves, where was the Shechina? The Shechina was with them. Moshe Rabbeinu was born with the Shechina. And she realized, and she knew. And that was the prophecy of Miriam. She was a prophetess at the age of 6, that my parents are going to be the parents of Moshe Shel Yisrael. They're going to be the parents of the Redeemer. That was the prophecy. Because we find, how do we know this? Because we find when we left after the Kriyas Yamsuf, it says Miriam Achos Moshe. She sang the Shir with the women. So Rashi over this immediately cites the Gemara. Why she identifies Achos Moshe? Because she prophesied to her father, ultimately you're going to be the parents of Moshe Shel Yisrael. He was born as Moshe Shel Yisrael. That the Shekhinah already was with him at that moment. And as a result of this, when Yocheved put Moshe in the Nile, there's no question he wasn't going to drown. As we discussed, when she built that box, what was the quality of that material? Chazal tell us, according to one of it was the most inferior quality material. Because it would have been considered wasteful spending more than that minimum amount. I mean, you're talking about saving your child. The answer is no. Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have drowned, even if she would have been directly in the water. The building of that box was only to conceal the miracle. So if that's the case, spending more than you need to conceal the miracle is just being wasteful. Tzaddikim are not wasteful when it comes to their assets. It's like the Pachim Kitanim.
Rabbi, why wouldn't the Torah mention the name of Miriam and Yocheved now? That had nothing to do with the birth of Moshe. Now she's putting him in the river.
Lo yochla od hitzbino. She could no longer hide him. Vatikach lo tevas gome. She took for him a box made of gome. Gome is a type of wood. V'tachemro b'chemro zovis. And she coated it, she waterproofed it with lime on the inside and pitch on the outside. Vatosam bo esayelid. And she put the child in it. Vatosam basuf al svasayor. And she put him in the bulrushes at the edge of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what's going to be, to see how this prophecy is going to manifest itself. Is Hashem going to save him? Because it was a miracle. Even in the box, why didn't he drown? Right? Why did Moshe Rabbeinu not strike the Nile by the Mak of Dom? Because since he was saved by the water, it would have been an act of an ingrate. So when he was put in the box had nothing to do with him not drowning. So Yocheved didn't know, is he going to drown? Is he going to make it or not make it? So she stood at a distance to see whether our prophecy is going to come true or not come true. And therefore the story follows. Okay, want to speak Ernie's question. After he was born and after what we said, according to the Maral, it should say, Vatikach Yocheved, and put him into the Asfasa Yor. Even what about Miriam, his sister? What about call her Pua? Refer to she has a name. Vatik the taste of Achosa his sister stood at a distance. Ladea Mayeshalo. Right? The sister has nothing to do with the whole story, right? Who's his sister? His sister is Bas Levi. That's who she is, right? Miriam was the oldest child of this couple. But the question is not a question anymore. His mother took him, put him in. The mother is the mother. She conceived him, but we're talking about what was the objective of this. We already stated that Moshe Rabbeinu is unrelated to the characteristics of his parents. So identify who she is now, it's totally irrelevant. I mean, even later. How do we know who Moshe's parents were? Only later does the Torah tell us who they were. Right? Amram and Miriam. Amram and Yocheved. So the question is not a question. Why doesn't it? Because it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant who put him in the Yam Suf. It's irrelevant at this moment who his sister is. Torah doesn't have to identify them. When we talk about Eliezer finding the wife for Yitzchak, Torah has to tell us who he is. That despite who he was, he's Eved Avram. Eliezer is Eved Avram. And we point out certain characteristics of who that agent was, who the slave was. But here it's irrelevant who put him in and who his sister was. Therefore, the Torah doesn't have to reveal this at this moment.
That's good. It's interesting. The daughter.
She coated the box with chemer, right? Chemer ubezefis. Chemer and zefis. Lime on the inside and pitch on the outside. Zefis mibachutz v'tit mifnim. Why? So the tzaddik should not be exposed to the foul smell of pitch. Now, what is this all about? Yocheved understood it wasn't her child. When he was born, the Shekhinah was there. It would be inappropriate to expose Moshe Rabbeinu to what? Shlirichos tzaddik. This human being is that it would be inappropriate to expose him to anything which is what? Which is foul smelling. Shilurichos tzaddik. It's not because it was her child. It was also tzaddik. I was just thinking, the Balaturim had said earlier, it says, what was the bondage? It was brick and mortar. Chemar ulevenim. So the Balaturim said earlier, the lettuce chemar, right? Just Pasuk Yudalit. It says they embittered their lives bechomer levenim. Balaturim says chomer choser. The vav is deleted. Who osius beramach. The bondage was the totality of the Jew. Ramach ivorim. That's the total physical makeup of the Jew was enslaved. The Yimor Chayim means every aspect of their being was actually embittered. The whole idea was to destroy them physically, that they should not proliferate. It says that she went and she coated the box b'chemer ubelevenim with lime and pitch. The chemer was inside. Now, what is chemer? If you go with the Balaturim, it's also Ramach, same letters, right? Ramach, because what existed within the box has to do. That's Ramach. What does the Ramach correspond to? We say the Jewish neshama of a Jew.
248.
The Chavetz Chaim always brings the Rav Chaim Vital. The 248 components to Jewish neshama, and the Ramach mitzvah say each one corresponds to another component of the neshama. And when you do the mitzvah, it fuses that component with the spirituality of what? Of that mitzvah. It's a spiritual infusion. Moshe Rabbeinu was from birth was a representation of Ramach. The Ramach mitzvah say. So the inside, what is it? It's chemer. Chemer is Ramach. I'm just saying this. I didn't look at the Balaturim here yet. No, it doesn't say here. The daughter of Paro, she went to bathe by the Nile, and her maidens, they accompanied her by the side of the Yor. She saw the box. Something unusual, a box floating in the water. She extended her hand, we'll see, or she sent her maidservant, and she took it. So Rashi over here says, in Hey, Al Yarayor, Rabseinu Dorshu Holchus Loshem Miso. Hine Anoche Holich Lomus, Lefisha Michubo. When she took the box, her maidservants, they protested. Let's see what time. Oh, it's late. Okay. David, you're being faulted for getting